I would love to circle back on the case that you settled recently, the civil rights case, if you don't mind, kind of going into that. I would love to talk about race discrimination and harassment in the workplace. Can you kind of take us through the Nicole Birden case?
Well, I wish I could say it was a settlement, but we won it. We won a very contentious jury trial in Los Angeles Superior Court last year, and but of course, we got a good win. The jury awarded close to $1.6 million on behalf of our client. The judge awards another $800,000 in attorney's fees. So there's a lot on the line there, $2.4 million in terms of, this is a situation where an employer, and here it's the UC Regents is the employer. Now, I'm a UCLA law graduate, and this was out of UCLA Hospital in Santa Monica, institutions that I hold dear to my heart. One of the jurors that in voir dire said, I just graduated UCLA. I don't know if I could hold UCLA accountable. I said, well, don't you think it's important? Don't you think it's important that for the institutions that we believe in, that when there is wrongdoing, that we hold them accountable? And he said, yeah. And, he was a young man who gave good answers to other questions. So I left him on the jury, and he was the foreperson. So it's like, it was kind of beautiful in that respect. But Nicole Birden was an African-American phlebotomist who was just dedicated to her work and was a very good phlebotomist, did more blood draws than most of her coworkers, and we were able to prove that. But unfortunately, there was a clique of dispatchers and coworkers who had it in for her. And it got to the point where it seemed like they definitely had it in for her based on her race, that they were treating her differently than the other employers in the workplace. And she complained in writing a couple of times. And now, if I had been writing her emails or looking at her emails, I would have done them very differently, because she just kind of threw it out there like, I'm being harassed, I'm being discriminated against, this is unfair. It's, and she really didn't go into any detail. Well, what did her boss do? And what did human resources do? Absolutely nothing. They just ignored her emails. But when another worker complained about her, boom, it was a full-scale investigation. And we're really able to show the different treatment. Like, why does this bring in a full investigation, but you're just ignoring her emails? And what we were really able to show is that there was an implicit bias and stereotypes that were going on in the workplace. And I think that it really shows why so many African Americans right now are saying, hey, there's two Americas, there really is. And the America for African Americans and other minorities and women in the workplace in some industries too. It runs the gamut, right? That there were stereotypes used, such as she's lazy, she's untrustworthy, she's a liar. None of that was true about Nicole Birden. When you really got, when she testified, I could just see the jury waiting for it because they had heard some things about her, and she gets up there and you could just see they're waiting. And when I was questioning her, like, oh, wow, she's a really sweet person. She's a really nice person. She is a really nice person. Like I say, the likability is a big factor. Juries aren't going to give that kind of money, honestly, to someone that they don't like. So, that's why I always tell people, like, you really have to conduct yourself in a way that, doesn't, they always say, it's like football. They always get the guy who retaliates, they never see the first, the first hit, right? So it's the same thing in the workplace. So we were able to show and close the arguments, that you heard the term driving while black. Well, for Nicole Birden, it was like talking to another coworker while black, riding an elevator while black. I mean, someone actually complained that they saw her outside with a lab coat on. They made a big deal about it that, but it was like everybody did that. But for Nicole Birden, she must have not been doing her job when she was taking a break. Now, every employee, right, is entitled to break time. So the fact that you see them outside getting a breath of fresh air doesn't mean that you complain about it, and doesn't mean that, when there was this complaint, she gets called to the carpet by her boss. What were you doing outside? Where were you? And this was like, a situation where she doesn't necessarily know what she was doing at the time, but it just exemplified the different ways that she was being treated as compared to her coworkers. The fact that she had at least sent those emails, Gina, was just so crucial, because one of the standards are, and this relates to that avoidable consequences doctrine that I was talking about, is you have to show that the employer had notice, but it's a known or should have known standard. So even though they never called her in and questioned her, what do you mean by this? We were able to show, well, they should have known about it. Because if they would have responded to our emails like they responded to other people's complaints, she would have told them what she was going through. And the fact that they claimed that they didn't was more a function of them not doing their jobs when she was sending those emails, rather than Nicole not coming in and saying it. And I think that, one thing, I know so many people are saying, well, what can I do to make a difference right now? And one of it is being willing to be a witness. I mean, we had another coworker who was African American at great risk to herself. She was on pregnancy leave, and she came into court and told the truth. Now, and having that independent witness, someone who comes in and validates that she too, although she didn't bear the brunt as much as Nicole, but she too experienced discrimination and harassment in the workplace. That type of testimony makes all the difference. So, well, none of us really want to get that jury summons, and none of us really want to be, get a call, did you witness this, and get involved. As a community, we really have to see how we're there for each other. And, I always, one important thing is let the truth be your guiding light, whether you're a witness or a client. And I'm always insistent with my clients. Tell me the truth. Tell me the whole truth. The truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And, we can figure out how to deal with the truth. But what I can't come back from is if you've lied about something critical and you get caught, we're most likely going to lose, and we may be able to explain it, and sometimes you can, but, it's really important to allow the truth to be your guide. And one of the things about Nicole Birden was, she was an absolutely honest, hardworking person who was just there to do her job and was just treated badly by her coworkers. So we were able to go into LA Superior Court with a very diverse jury. And the individuals who were harassing her were of Latina descent. I was a little scared to death about that, honestly, because, Los Angeles has a very high population. But by the end of the trial, everyone saw this for what it was. And when I went through those implicit biases in closing argument, I said, these are the types of things that were said about Nicole Birden, but in different contexts, they could be said about many different ethnicities or genders. And it just, the facts and the evidence in this case, it was based on her race, and it was based on her being African American. And at the end of the trial, I will never forget, because, people hustle out a little bit, but one of the male Latino jurors who, you get a tough read on person. I mean, he reached over and he touched my client's arm and he goes, nobody should ever have to go through what you went through. And I it was just such a beautiful, powerful moment, because it really showed how ultimately humanity triumphed over any sort of, ethnic differences that we have and that get exploited in certain situations. And, and it's what we want, right? We really want a society where, where people are judged by the work that they do, and where we come together as human beings and be a true country, united country. And I won't get into politics, but hopefully we'll have an opportunity for change in order to help accomplish that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I keep on saying, better days are coming,
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but it's the same thing in the race discrimination cases as any other types of cases, especially in sex harassment cases. We've handled sex harassment cases over the years. back when Anita Hill was testifying against Clarence Thomas in the early 90s, we had, my firm had one of the biggest sexual harassment cases against Geffen Records, Penny Muck versus Geffen Records back then. And we actually set the precedent for male-on-male sexual harassment being a violation of the Fair Employment and Housing Act. I got kicked out of court in the early 90s, and they were like, not sex harassment because it's two men. I mean, now you think, what? How could that be? But, it shouldn't have been that way. And we took it to the Court of Appeal and got a published decision. And I'd have to say that as an attorney, that's one of the most rewarding things. And I've had the opportunity to do that several times over my career. It's one thing when you win an individual case for a client, but when you could take that individual case and then set a precedent where you're not only helping your own client, but helping so many more employees across the board in the state of California get justice and have their rights protected. It's a really, again, just one of those wonderful feelings as being a lawyer and making a difference.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Well, it's really appreciated, the good work that you're doing and standing up for these people that are being discriminated and harassed. And I think now more than ever, our society is showing that, we're not going to stand for it anymore. And it's great that you came on today to, share all of this great insight to let people know that they don't just have to just take it, that they do have recourse if they're being discriminated or being treated unfairly, because of their race or some sort of disability where employers aren't making, reasonable accommodations to make them feel safe in the workplace. And so I really appreciate you coming on today to, share that people have options.
Well, it really is my pleasure. I have been doing this for a long time, like I said, and I always feel like, so what if you weren't a lawyer, what would you be? I'd love, a teacher would be great, and I've been a mentor to so many lawyers and helping lawyers through. And so I'm hoping that, both people who might have issues can watch this, but also attorneys too, because I try to inspire. They say if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. And, I'm not going to lie. Sometimes this is hard work. And there are nights I wish, I didn't have to work as hard as I do. But, it's really important work and people need our help. And we can get to a result and achieve justice. But what I also try to do is help people along that litigation journey. You may be having a hard time, but you're not going to have a hard time from us. We're there. I ask people, take that weight that's been on your shoulders, and now you can take it off and put it on mine, because I've been through this. We fought these battles. Sometimes you might get a bad ruling or something, but we always get back up. We always fight for our clients. And so it's just really important to be available, to be present, and to help people through what's a bad time for them. If they've been through a bad time, I don't want to, as their lawyer, be one of the people giving them a bad time. I want to make it easier for them through this process, not harder.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm sure that, there are so many people out there that are benefiting from this information, and, just seeing what your clients have to say about you, obviously speaks a ton to the kind of value that you bring in helping people. So thank you again so much for what you do and for coming on today. I want to remind the people that are listening that you can find Jim at thejamesdesimonelaw.com. If you need some help or legal services, feel free to reach out to him. And Jim, thank you again so much for joining us today and sharing your insights with us.
Thank you very much, Gina. I really appreciate the invitation, and always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much.